have spent decades watching people who did everything society told them to do still end up financially struggling, and what I saw was deeply unsettling. I watched highly educated Americans, people with degrees from respected universities, impressive resumes, and six-figure salaries work 40 years of their lives and retire with barely anything to show for it. These were not careless people, not reckless spenders, not fools. They were disciplined, hard-working, intelligent individuals who believed that if they studied hard, got a good job, and followed the traditional path, wealth would naturally follow. Yet over and over again, I saw the same painful outcome: retirement accounts that were too small, dependence on modest government checks, and a quiet, private panic about whether their savings would last the rest of their lives. The uncomfortable truth is that education does not guarantee financial success, and in many cases it creates a dangerous illusion of security. Being academically intelligent is not the same as being financially intelligent, and confusing those two ideas is one of the most expensive mistakes people make. The modern economy reinforces this illusion by rewarding credentials with higher salaries, which makes people feel wealthy long before they actually are. A professional earning $100,000 a year feels successful compared to someone earning half that amount. But a high paycheck is not the same thing as wealth. Wealth is what you own, not what you earn, and most people never truly internalize that difference. They celebrate promotions, bonuses, and salary increases while ignoring their net worth, which is the only number that truly measures financial progress. I've seen doctors earning $300,000 annually who still had no real assets because every dollar they earned was already committed to mortgages, car payments, insurance, lifestyle upgrades, and debt. Their income looked impressive, but their balance sheets told a very different story. When you live at the level of your income, no matter how high that income becomes, you are not building wealth. You are simply maintaining a more expensive version of the same fragile life. The tragedy is that this pattern often begins with good intentions. Educated professionals want to reward themselves for years of hard work and sacrifice, so they upgrade their homes, buy nicer cars, and enjoy the comforts they previously denied themselves. None of those choices are inherently wrong, but when every increase in income is matched by an equal increase in spending, financial progress stalls. Inflation quietly erodes purchasing power, taxes take a large portion of each paycheck, and decades pass without any meaningful growth in assets. By the time retirement approaches, many of these individuals discover that their lifestyle was always supported by active income, and without that income, the entire structure collapses. The most dangerous part of this process is that it feels normal. Everyone around them is living the same way, driving similar cars, living in similar houses, and making similar financial decisions. When everyone in your social circle is financially fragile, fragility starts to feel like stability. I learned early in life that there is a profound difference between looking wealthy and being wealthy. A person with a high salary can appear successful while quietly living paycheck to paycheck, whereas someone with a modest income but a high savings rate can accumulate significant wealth over time. The key variable is not how much you earn, but how much you keep and how effectively you invest what you keep. That idea runs directly against cultural messaging, which glorifies high income and consumption while rarely celebrating quiet, disciplined saving. The financial system itself encourages spending by making credit easily available and by presenting consumption as a reward for hard work. This creates a cycle in which educated individuals continue chasing higher salaries in the belief that the next raise will finally create financial breathing room, even though previous raises never did. What they fail to realize is that wealth is built through the gap between income and expenses, and if that gap never widens, time alone will not save them. Understanding this distinction between paycheck and wealth is the first step toward financial independence, but it is also the hardest lesson to accept because it challenges the belief that education and hard work are enough on their own. They are not. They are tools, not guarantees. If those tools are not paired with disciplined saving, intelligent investing, and conscious control over lifestyle inflation, they produce comfort but not security, and comfort without security is one of the most fragile states a person can live in. One of the biggest financial traps educated people fall into begins before they even earn their first real paycheck, and that trap is student loan debt. Society tells young people that education is always worth any cost, that borrowing tens of thousands of dollars is an investment in their future, and that once they graduate, higher income will make those loans easy to manage. On paper, that sounds logical, but in reality, debt silently steals time from your financial life. Every dollar you owe is a dollar that cannot be invested, and every month you send money to a lender is a month you are not building assets that grow in value. The tragedy is not just the size of the debt, but the timing of it. People take on these loans at 18 or 20 years old, long before they fully understand interest rates, opportunity cost, or compound growth. By the time they realize what those monthly payments are doing to their financial flexibility, they are already locked into a repayment schedule that can stretch for decades. The early years of a career are the most powerful years for investing because money invested in your 20s has the longest time to compound. Yet those same years are often consumed by loan payments. Instead of watching their investments grow, many graduates spend their most valuable decade simply trying to reach zero net worth. That delay has enormous consequences later in life because compound interest rewards time more than it rewards talent or effort. Two people with identical incomes can end up with vastly different financial outcomes simply because one started investing earlier while the other was busy servicing debt. What makes this situation especially frustrating is that it is often hidden behind a narrative of success. A young professional with a graduate degree and a well-paying job appears to be thriving, but behind the scenes they may be carrying 6 figures of liabilities that quietly eat away at their future wealth. The pressure to maintain a certain lifestyle after graduation makes the problem worse. Educated professionals often feel compelled to live in nicer neighborhoods, drive respectable cars, and present themselves in ways that match their professional status. This creates a dangerous combination: high debt paired with high expenses. Instead of using their strong income to rapidly eliminate debt and build investments, many people stretch their finances to support appearances, which keeps them financially fragile for much longer than necessary. Alongside debt, taxes represent another invisible force draining wealth from those who rely entirely on salary. Most employees see taxes only as deductions on their paychecks, but they rarely understand how much of their lifetime earnings will ultimately go to federal, state, and local governments. Between income tax, payroll taxes, sales tax, property tax, and various hidden fees, a significant portion of what professionals earn never reaches their bank accounts. High-income earners often sit in the worst position because they make too much to qualify for meaningful relief, yet not enough to access sophisticated tax strategies commonly used by business owners and investors. This results in a lifetime of paying high effective tax rates without ever learning that there are legal ways to structure income and investments more efficiently. The tax system rewards specific behaviors such as investing for the long term, owning businesses, and contributing to retirement accounts, but many educated professionals never study these roles because they assume taxes are fixed and unavoidable. As a result, they leave thousands of dollars on the table every year simply because they never took the time to understand how the system actually works. Over a 40-year career, those missed opportunities compound into enormous losses. What makes this particularly ironic is that many of the same individuals who mastered complex academic subjects avoid learning basic tax and financial planning because it feels outside their field of expertise. They delegate everything to accountants or payroll systems and assume that someone else is optimizing their situation, when in reality most professionals are following default settings designed for simplicity, not efficiency. The desire to look successful further deepens these financial wounds. In professional environments, appearances carry social and psychological weight. People compare homes, vacations, cars, and clothing as silent indicators of status. This subtle competition encourages spending that has nothing to do with personal happiness and everything to do with external validation. When a raise arrives, instead of directing that additional income toward investments or debt repayment, many people feel pressure to upgrade their lifestyle so that their outward appearance matches their new salary. Each upgrade increases fixed expenses and reduces flexibility, locking them into a higher cost of living that requires continuous high income just to maintain. Over time, this creates a fragile structure where any disruption, job loss, illness, or economic downturn can cause serious financial stress. The painful irony is that the very symbols people use to signal success often prevent them from achieving real, lasting financial security. Expensive cars lose value, luxury apartments provide no return, and designer goods generate no income. Yet these are the items that absorb much of the extra money professionals earn. Meanwhile, the quiet accumulation of assets, index funds, retirement accounts, and income-producing investments happens out of sight and without social recognition, making it less appealing in a culture that celebrates visible success. The result is a generation of educated, hardworking individuals who appear prosperous on the surface while quietly struggling to build genuine wealth underneath. Understanding the combined impact of debt, taxes, and lifestyle inflation is crucial because these forces operate slowly and invisibly. They do not destroy wealth overnight. Instead, they erode it year after year until the damage becomes obvious only when it is too late to easily fix. Recognizing these patterns early allows individuals to make different choices that prioritize flexibility, asset accumulation, and long-term security over short-term appearances and socially reinforced spending habits. Another reason educated people struggle financially is not because they lack income, but because they lack resilience. They've built lives that look stable from the outside, yet collapse under the smallest financial pressure. A surprising number of professionals with strong salaries have no meaningful emergency fund, which means a single unexpected expense, a medical bill, car repair, or temporary job loss forces them into debt. Without a financial buffer, every crisis becomes a financial event, and each of those events chips away at long-term wealth. Credit cards, personal loans, and payment plans step in to fill the gap, but they do so at high interest rates that silently drain future income. This pattern creates a cycle where emergencies are no longer rare disruptions, but recurring financial setbacks, each one delaying progress toward financial independence. What makes this especially dangerous is that people often mistake their steady paycheck for security, assuming that as long as they remain employed, they do not need large cash reserves. Yet careers are not as predictable as they once were. Layoffs, automation, industry shifts, and health issues can interrupt even the most stable professional paths. Without savings, these interruptions force people to make rushed, desperate decisions, selling investments at the wrong time, taking unfavorable loans, or accepting poor job offers simply to maintain cash flow. An emergency fund, while unexciting and seemingly unproductive, acts as a shock absorber that protects long-term investments and provides the psychological freedom to make rational choices under pressure. Closely connected to this lack of financial cushion is another widespread issue: fear of investing. Many educated individuals, despite their intelligence, treat the stock market as if it were a casino rather than a long-term wealth-building tool. They remember headlines about market crashes and recessions, and they focus on short-term volatility instead of long-term growth. As a result, they keep large portions of their savings in low-yield accounts that fail to keep up with inflation. This feels safe because the nominal value of their money does not fluctuate, but in reality, their purchasing power steadily declines year after year. Inflation is a silent tax that reduces what money can buy, and avoiding investment is essentially a guarantee that savings will lose real value over time. The paradox is that by trying to avoid risk, these individuals accept a different kind of risk, the certainty of gradual financial erosion. Investing in broad, diversified markets over long periods has historically produced positive returns despite temporary downturns, yet fear prevents many from participating in this growth. Educated professionals often believe they need to fully understand complex financial models or perfectly time the market before they begin, which leads to endless research and perpetual hesitation. This pursuit of certainty becomes a form of procrastination disguised as caution. Meanwhile, years pass, and the opportunity for compound growth quietly slips away. The difference between starting to invest at 25 versus 35 can mean hundreds of thousands of dollars in lost potential wealth, not because of higher contributions, but because of lost time. Time is the most powerful ingredient in compounding, and once it is gone, it cannot be recovered through higher income or later effort. Those who delay investing often plan to compensate by contributing more in the future, but this strategy rarely works because life, as expenses typically increase with aged children, housing, healthcare, and other responsibilities compete for the same income that was supposed to fund aggressive catch-up investing. In addition to this, many people underestimate the emotional benefits of investing regularly. Consistent contributions build not only financial assets, but also confidence and familiarity with market fluctuations. Over time, investors become less reactive to short-term volatility because they have experienced multiple cycles and understand that temporary losses are a normal part of long-term growth. Those who stay on the sidelines never develop this perspective, so every market downturn reinforces their fear and justifies their inaction. This creates a self-reinforcing loop where the absence of experience leads to fear, and fear leads to continued absence from the market. Breaking this cycle requires accepting that uncertainty is unavoidable and that waiting for perfect clarity is itself a costly decision. Financial resilience is not built by avoiding all risk, but by balancing risk with preparation, holding sufficient cash for emergencies while allowing long-term investments to grow. Educated individuals often excel at analyzing problems, but in personal finance, overanalysis without action can be more damaging than occasional mistakes. A simple, disciplined investment strategy executed consistently over decades will almost always outperform sporadic, hesitant participation driven by fear. The true danger is not market volatility, but the silent loss of time and purchasing power caused by standing still. Among all the financial concepts people learn too late, compound interest stands out as the most misunderstood and the most powerful. Compounding is not dramatic or exciting in its early stages. In fact, its initial progress appears almost insignificant. Small investments grow slowly at first, which leads many people to underestimate their eventual impact. However, as years pass and returns begin generating their own returns, growth accelerates in a way that feels almost exponential. This delayed acceleration is why starting early matters far more than investing large amounts later. Someone who invests modestly in their 20s can surpass someone who invests aggressively in their 40s simply because the earlier investor allowed time to do most of the work. Yet many educated professionals focus almost exclusively on increasing their income rather than maximizing their time in the market. They assume that once they reach a certain salary level, they will begin investing seriously, not realizing that the lost years of compounding can never be recovered. This misunderstanding feeds directly into unrealistic retirement expectations. Many people carry a vague belief that reaching around $1 million, for example, will automatically guarantee a comfortable retirement. They rarely calculate how much income that some can realistically generate, especially after accounting for inflation, taxes, and rising healthcare costs. Retirement planning is often treated as an abstract future concern rather than a concrete mathematical problem. People assume that Social Security or employer-sponsored plans will fill in any gaps, even though those systems were never designed to fully replace working income. As pensions disappear and life expectancy increases, individuals bear more responsibility for funding their own retirement than any previous generation. Despite this shift, many continue to save at levels that were appropriate in an era when pensions were common and health care was less expensive. This mismatch between expectations and preparation leads to a painful realization late in life. Retirement is not just about stopping work. It is about maintaining a lifestyle without active income. If someone requires $50,000 per year beyond government benefits and they follow a conservative withdrawal rate, they may need well over $1 million invested to generate that income sustainably. Few people perform these calculations early enough to adjust their saving behavior in time. Instead, they postpone serious retirement planning until their 50s, at which point the numbers become intimidating and the required contributions feel impossible. This often leads to denial or reliance on optimistic assumptions, such as expecting strong market returns, planning to work longer than health may allow, or assuming they will dramatically reduce expenses in retirement. Each of these assumptions introduces risk, and when combined, they create a fragile plan that depends on multiple favorable outcomes. The harsh reality is that retirement planning rewards consistency and early action more than brilliance or high income. Someone who steadily saves a fixed percentage of their earnings from the beginning of their career is far more likely to achieve financial independence than someone who attempts to compensate later with sporadic large contributions. This is because compounding amplifies early discipline while punishing delays. Another overlooked aspect of retirement planning is the psychological adjustment required to transition from saving to spending. People who have spent decades accumulating assets may struggle to shift into a withdrawal mindset, especially if they lack confidence in the sustainability of their portfolio. This anxiety can lead to underspending and a diminished quality of life, even when their savings are technically sufficient. Conversely, those who overestimate their resources may withdraw too aggressively and deplete their funds prematurely. Both outcomes stem from inadequate planning and a lack of clear understanding of how much is truly needed. Effective retirement planning requires not only saving enough, but also structuring assets in a way that provides predictable income and flexibility. It involves considering taxes, investment allocation, healthcare costs, and potential longevity. Educated professionals often excel at planning within their careers, but fail to apply the same analytical rigor to their personal finances. They trust generic rules of thumb or assume that financial institutions will guide them appropriately without recognizing that many systems are designed around average behavior rather than optimal outcomes. The result is a generation approaching retirement with incomplete plans, uncertain expectations, and a heavy dependence on market performance during their final working years. By the time these issues become urgent, the most powerful lever, time, has already been lost. Even among those who manage to accumulate some savings and investments, another critical area is often neglected: what happens to that wealth after they are gone. Estate planning is frequently dismissed as something only extremely wealthy families need. Yet the absence of a clear plan can cause significant financial and emotional strain for ordinary households. Without proper legal documents, such as wills, trusts, and updated beneficiary designations, assets may be tied up in lengthy legal processes, exposed to unnecessary taxes, or distributed in ways that do not reflect the individual's intentions. Families already coping with grief can find themselves navigating complex legal systems, facing disputes, or making rushed decisions about property and finances. The irony is that people spend decades building their careers and accumulating assets, but postpone the relatively simple steps required to protect and transfer those assets efficiently. This tendency to delay extends beyond estate planning into nearly every area of personal finance. One of the most destructive habits educated individuals develop is waiting for the perfect moment to take action. They wait until their student loans are fully paid off before investing, wait until their salary reaches a certain level before saving aggressively, wait until they feel confident in their financial knowledge before opening investment accounts. This constant postponement is often justified as prudence or responsibility, but in practice it leads to years of missed opportunities. Financial progress depends more on consistency than perfection, starting with small, imperfect steps, automatic contributions to retirement accounts, gradual increases in savings rates. Basic diversified investments creates momentum that compounds over time. Waiting for ideal conditions rarely leads to better outcomes because life continuously introduces new expenses, new uncertainties, and new reasons to delay. Procrastination in finance is particularly costly because time is an irreplaceable resource. Money lost in a bad investment can potentially be recovered, but years lost to inaction can never be regained. The habit of delaying action is reinforced by the complexity of financial information available today. Endless articles, videos, and opinions create the impression that one must master a vast body of knowledge before making any decision. This information overload leads to analysis paralysis, where individuals continue researching without ever implementing a plan. In reality, many effective financial strategies are straightforward: spend less than you earn, maintain an emergency fund, invest regularly in diversified assets, minimize taxes legally, and protect your estate with basic legal documents. These principles are simple, but they require discipline and the willingness to act despite uncertainty. Another psychological barrier is the discomfort associated with confronting one's current financial reality. Calculating net worth, projecting retirement needs, or acknowledging insufficient savings can be emotionally difficult, so people avoid these exercises and instead focus on more immediate concerns. Unfortunately, ignoring financial reality does not prevent its consequences. It merely delays the moment when those consequences become unavoidable. The decision between building wealth and maintaining comfortable habits is rarely made in a single dramatic moment. It is made through thousands of small daily choices, whether to save or spend, to invest or wait, to learn or ignore. Over decades, these choices accumulate into dramatically different outcomes. Two individuals with similar education, intelligence, and starting income can end up living completely different retirements based solely on the consistency of their financial decisions. One may enjoy flexibility, security, and the ability to support family or charitable causes, while the other may rely heavily on limited fixed income and face constant anxiety about unexpected expenses. The difference is not luck or secret knowledge. It is the willingness to act early, accept temporary discomfort, and prioritize long-term security over short-term validation. Ultimately, the most important realization is that no institution, neither employers, nor governments, nor financial markets, will take primary responsibility for an individual's financial future. Systems can provide support, but they cannot replace personal discipline and planning. Each person must decide whether they will continue following the default path that leads many educated professionals into financial mediocrity, or whether they will consciously design a different trajectory. The choice is not made once. It is reaffirmed repeatedly through action. Decades will pass regardless of which path is chosen. The only question is whether those years will compound into growing assets and increasing freedom, or into missed opportunities and dependence on limited safety nets.